The microphone burst with static, and Mara Ellison's name appeared across the ballroom screen beneath a sentence she had never written. I want to become Mrs. Viscari before another woman takes what should be mine. Laughter spread through the founders' banquet. Veronica Sarto stood beside Don Matteo Viscari's wheelchair, one hand on the sealed spouse-regent file. A maid assigned to his private rooms, she said, mistook access for affection and disability for opportunity. More laughter followed as two guards approached Mara. Veronica raised the forged letter. You are dismissed. Your locker will be searched, and this humiliation will enter the record. Mara did not plead or look toward the doors. She walked to the counsel table and placed two black locking pins beside Veronica's file. The room quieted. You say I came here for his name, Mara said. Then let him answer me where none of you can answer for him. She faced Matteo. Matteo Viscari, will you marry me? The laughter returned louder than before. Matteo fitted the pins into the braces hidden beneath his trousers, locked both knees, and gripped his chair. The laughter died as he rose. His body trembled with pain, but for 12 seconds, Don Matteo Viscari stood before the council, already preparing to inherit him. My answer, he said, staring at Veronica, is mine. Then he looked at the spouse-regent document, and that file was registered before I ever gave one. 36 hours earlier. Chapter 1. The trousers cut for standing. Mara Ellison found two charcoal suits hanging in Don Matteo Viscari's dressing room. They appeared identical, the same wool buttons and measurements stitched inside the waist. But Mara had spent 7 years cutting clothes for bodies that did not follow ordinary patterns. The first trousers had a shortened rise and less fabric behind the knees, both designed for sitting. The second pair changed when she turned it inside out. Magnetic openings ran from mid-thigh to each cuff. Reinforced panels followed the outer seams. The knees were shaped to remain smooth when the legs straightened, while the waistband allowed room for locked braces. One pair had been cut for sitting. The other had been cut for standing. The ledger assigned the adaptive pair to the banquet. Yet someone had placed the seated trousers inside its labeled bag and hidden the standing pair behind 3 winter coats. Mara was studying the right knee when Matteo's wheelchair motor went silent behind her. You were told to prepare the black suit. She turned. Matteo sat in the doorway, his white shirt open at the collar. His stillness made armed men lower their voices. I was preparing it. You opened both. They are not meant for the same purpose. His gaze dropped to the seams. Explain. Mara placed the trousers side by side. This pair stays clean while you sit. This one opens over long leg braces and stays balanced if your hips extend. His fingers stopped against the wheel rim. No second pattern was authorized. Then someone obtained your measurements without calling themselves a tailor. Matteo rolled closer and touched the reinforced knee. Who else knows? No one I've told. Why not? Because whoever switched them already knows. For the first time, he looked at her as someone inside the danger. He closed the door with the control on his chair. Show me everything you noticed. Chapter 2. A measurement. No tailor requested. Mara spread the altered trousers across the dressing table. The standing pair came from an older pattern, she said. This replacement was cut from recent measurements. Matteo's expression hardened. You can date measurements by looking at cloth, not the date. The body. She pointed to the left hip. Your pelvis sits higher on this side now. The right thigh has been widened for muscle loss, and the seam behind the knee shortened where a brace would press. Those changes had been recorded only during private rehabilitation. Dr. Warren's tailor has not entered this house in 4 months, Matteo said. Then someone else obtained the measurements. No one touched me. They may not have needed to. Mara lifted the inner label. The maker's mark had been cut away, leaving silver adhesive. A body scan tag. Adaptive workshops use them to transfer seated measurements. Whoever ordered this had access to a recent scan, not an old suit. Matteo rolled closer. How do you know I used to make clothes for people who wore braces? You listed housekeeping on your application. I listed my last paid position. The answer was respectful, but it did not bend. You opened sealed garment bags and told no one. I preserved what I found. The wrong trousers were placed inside the correct bag. If I had called security first, whoever approved the switch would know. The handle moved once outside the door, then stopped. Matteo lowered his voice. Show me how the cloth fails. Mara traced the shortened rise toward the knee. When your hips extend, this section pulls backward. If the braces lock, the fabric drags them off alignment. If they do not, my knees collapse. Yes. Matteo folded the trousers over his lap, then pressed a concealed panel beside the wardrobe. A narrow elevator opened behind it. You wanted proof these were made for standing, he said. The doors slid apart. Come with me. Chapter 3. 12 seconds. The elevator opened under the dressing room into a rehabilitation suite. Parallel bars stood between padded platforms. A standing frame faced a mirror beside carbon braces. Mara stopped. This room is not on the staff plans. It is not on most security plans, Matteo said. Dr. Elise Warren has treated me here for 18 months. 3 weeks ago, she recorded my first rise from the chair. Using locked braces, Mara said. His gaze sharpened. Words matter when someone may be waiting for you to fail. Matteo rolled to the rack and locked his chair. He fitted the braces, then opened the magnetic seams of the adaptive trousers. Mara saw why the replacement pair was dangerous. Without those openings, the fabric would twist both knee locks before his hips fully extended. Stand where I can see the alignment, she said. You are giving orders, now I am asking whether you want an honest answer. A faint smile touched his mouth. Then he gripped the armrests. His shoulders drove downward. The braces clicked. His body rose slowly, trembling beneath the effort. 1 second. 4. At 7, his right knee shook inside the carbon shell. Mara did not touch him. She watched the brace, the cloth, and his hands. At 10, sweat appeared at his temple. At 12, Matteo lowered himself into the chair and released a breath through clenched teeth. Mara crouched beside the right brace, leaving space between them. The lock held. The seam stayed balanced. You can stand in the correct equipment. Only 12 seconds. 12 seconds is not nothing. It is also not walking. He studied her face, searching for pity and finding none. The council has been told there is no voluntary movement below my injury, he said. Mara looked toward the camera above the mirror. Then someone is not only hiding your progress. She held up the cut garment label. They are preparing evidence that the council's lie is true. Chapter 4. The bride registered without consent. Matteo locked the rehabilitation suite before they returned upstairs. In the dressing room, Mara gathered the trousers while Matteo opened the banquet schedule on his tablet. A seating chart filled the screen. Beside his name, one place card read, Veronica Sarto, future spouse regent. Mara looked at him. Did you approve that the card had been ordered 6 days earlier? Beneath it sat a ceremonial sequence recognition of intended spouse, transfer of emergency proxy confirmation of voting authority. His thumb went still. Veronica has held temporary proxy since the bombing, he said. It expires if I resume direct attendance. And tomorrow is your first appearance before the full council. Yes. Mara saw the structure. If they declare you unable to govern, the person beside you inherits the proxy, only if I named her. The attached declaration carried Matteo's digital seal. He opened the signature history. It had been registered at 2:16 the previous afternoon. At that time, Matteo had been downstairs with Dr. Warren. His signing device had remained locked in the study. Can the seal be copied? Mara asked. Not without my legal terminal or Veronica's emergency channel. A knock sounded. Don Viscari. Veronica called. The council printer needs final confirmation of tomorrow's order. Matteo closed the file. Mara lifted the false trousers. She is checking whether the switch was noticed, or whether I know I have already chosen a bride. The words sounded colder than any threat. Matteo opened the door only wide enough to face Veronica. Remove every marital designation from the banquet materials. Her smile did not move. Of course. Though the council has already received the registered notice. Behind her, an attendant carried a silver tray of place cards. The top card bore Veronica's new title in black ink. Not future spouse. Spouse regent. Chapter 5. The letter in her locker. Mara found the envelope before the evening staff briefing. It rested inside her locker on top of a folded apron placed too neatly to have slipped beneath the door. Her name was written in blue ink. No stamp, no seal. She did not touch it. Lena, she called to the linen supervisor across the changing room. Please bring the duty log and stand where you can see my hands. Lena frowned, but obeyed. Mara photographed the locker, the envelope, and the untouched latch. Then she used 2 clean clothespins to lift the paper onto a metal tray. The first line made Lena inhale sharply. Matteo, I know Veronica only wants your authority. I want the man beneath it. The letter continued in a voice Mara would never have used. It described private rooms, his body, and a plan to replace Veronica as Mrs. Viscari. At the bottom sat a careful imitation of Mara's signature. Lena whispered, They'll say you wrote this. They already intend to. Mara examined the sheet without unfolding it further. A pale crest appeared inside the paper when she held it toward the light. It was the watermark used by the council office. Housekeeping stationery carried no watermark at all. The changing room door opened. Dario Corsi entered with 2 security officers. Step away from the locker. Mara kept both hands visible. The envelope has been photographed in place. Lena witnessed the opening, and the paper is now on a clean tray. Dario's jaw tightened. You seem prepared. I have been accused before by people who expected panic to destroy the evidence for them. He reached for the letter. Mara moved the tray back. Not until you sign the chain of custody log. For several seconds, the head of security stared at a maid he had expected to frighten. Then his radio sounded. Veronica's voice came through clearly. Has Mara found it yet? Dario switched the radio off too late. Chapter 6. The missing locks. Dario recovered first. Routine status check, he said, reaching again for the tray. Mara looked at Lena. Record that the head of security attempted to take evidence before signing for it. Dario's hand stopped. Matteo's voice came from the doorway. And record that he will not touch it. Every person in the changing room straightened. Matteo rolled inside, read the first lines of the forged letter, then studied the watermark beneath the light. Seal the locker, he ordered. Lena keeps 1 copy of the log. Mara keeps another. Dario's expression hardened. That places evidence in the hands of a suspect. It places evidence beyond yours. Matteo turned his chair toward the corridor. Mara, come with me. They returned to the hidden rehabilitation suite through the dressing room elevator. The adaptive trousers remained where Mara had left them, but the equipment rack stood open. Matteo reached for the carbon braces. His fingers searched the right knee joint, then the left. Both locking pins were gone. Without them, the braces could still be strapped around his legs. They would even appear secured beneath his trousers. But the knees would fold the moment he transferred weight. Mara photographed the empty housings and the undisturbed dust around the rack. "Who inspected this room last?" she asked. "Dario controls the access reports." "Then we do not ask him for the original." Matteo opened the internal system. The public log showed no entry after Dr. Warren's visit. Mara pointed to a second line buried beneath the maintenance tab, chair height adjustment, authorized that morning through security. "Why adjust the chair to lower the seat?" Matteo said. "It would make the first rise harder." The missing pins, altered trousers, and lowered chair formed one design. "They expect you to stand tomorrow," Mara said. Matteo looked at the empty locks. "No, they expect me to try." Chapter 7. Ask me where they cannot answer. Matteo ordered the banquet cancelled before the elevator reached the dressing room. Mara stepped between his chair and the control panel. "If you stay upstairs tomorrow, what will Veronica tell the council? That the event was cancelled by my authority. She will say your condition worsened, that you could not appear, and that she protected you from public distress." His hand stayed over the call button. "You are asking me to enter a room prepared to make me fall. I am asking you not to give them the absence they prepared to explain." Matteo looked toward the altered trousers. "The pins are gone. Dario controls the chair, the doors, and the search. The letter gives them a reason to remove you before I speak. Then we separate what they can take from what they cannot." Mara photographed the serial numbers on both braces and sent copies to Lena. She sealed the correct trousers inside a linen bag, then placed the false pair in the garment case Veronica expected. Matteo opened a drawer beneath the therapy table. Inside lay 2 spare locking pins. "You had replacements. For emergencies. If Dario searches this room, he will look for equipment, not sewing supplies." Mara wrapped each pin inside a spool of black thread and returned them to her housekeeping kit. "If they search me, they will. Then the search must happen before the council." Matteo studied her. "You understand what that letter will make them call you?" "Yes. And you still intend to enter that room?" "I intend to make them finish the accusation where witnesses can see the evidence." Matteo handed her the founder's rules. One clause required the Don to answer any direct objection involving succession, marriage, or proxy authority. "If they speak for me," he said, "ask me where they cannot." Mara folded the rule into her apron. "And when they laugh, let them." His eyes held hers. "They will not be laughing at the end." Chapter 8. The Proposal. They prepared to mock the founder's banquet, opened beneath 40 crystal lights and a screen large enough to turn any accusation into theater. Matteo entered through the central doors in the altered chair Dario had approved. Its seat sat lower than usual, forcing his shoulders beneath every standing councilman around him. Mara remained with the service staff along the wall. The spare locking pins were hidden inside 2 spools in her housekeeping kit. Lena held copies of the locker log outside the ballroom. Veronica took the microphone before the first course. Tonight requires clarity before continuity. The screen behind her lit with Mara's name. Then the forged letter appeared. Whispers moved across the tables as Veronica read its most intimate lines aloud. She described Mara as a servant who had confused private access with consent, and Matteo's disability with an opening for advancement. Dario approached with 2 guards. Veronica looked directly at Mara. "You are dismissed. Your locker will be searched, and this humiliation will enter the record." A few guests laughed before she finished. Mara did not move toward the exit. Dario reached for her housekeeping kit. "Search it here," she said, in front of the council. He opened the case and removed the spools. One black locking pin slid onto the silver tray, then the second. Veronica's expression changed for less than a second. Mara lifted the chain of custody copy. These replaced the brace locks removed from Don Viscari's rehabilitation room. The letter in my locker was printed on council paper before I found it. Veronica raised the sealed marital file. A desperate employee has invented sabotage because her private proposal was discovered. Mara walked to the council table and placed both pins beside the document labeled Spouse Regent. "You say I came here for his name?" she said. She turned toward Matteo. "Then let me ask him myself." Chapter 9. Everyone laughed. Mara faced Matteo across the council table. "Matteo Viscari, will you marry me?" For one breath, no one reacted. Then a councilman near the Helix delegation laughed. Another joined him. The sound spread through the ballroom until even servants lowered their eyes. Veronica let it continue. "A convenient performance," she said. "The maid accused of seeking his name now confirms it herself." Mara did not look away. "The founder's rules require his answer." Veronica rested one hand on his wheelchair. "Don Viscari is under medical restriction. I will respond as his registered spouse regent." Matteo removed her hand. "No." The nearest tables fell silent. Mara slid the locking pins toward him. Beneath the charcoal trousers, magnetic seams opened over the carbon braces. Matteo fitted the right pin, then the left. Each lock clicked clearly. Dario stepped forward. Matteo looked at him. "Take another step and explain why these were missing from my equipment." Dario stopped. Matteo set both palms on the armrests and pushed upward. The lowered chair fought him first. Then the braces locked beneath his weight. He rose slowly. The laughter died. At 4 seconds, his right leg trembled. At 8, pain tightened his face. Mara stayed where she was, neither touching him nor pretending the effort was easy. At 12 seconds, Matteo looked directly at Veronica. "My answer is mine." He lowered himself into the chair with controlled care, breathing hard but fully conscious. Then he pointed to the sealed document beside her. "I reject Veronica Sarto as spouse regent. I did not authorize that registration." The council recorder stood. Under the founder's rules, a direct contradiction from the Don froze every succession marital and proxy vote. "For how long?" Veronica demanded. 72 hours, the recorder answered. Matteo looked at Mara. The room had stopped laughing, but Veronica was already reaching for the next lie. Chapter 10. "My answer is mine." The council recorder repeated Matteo's words into the official transcript. "I reject Veronica Sarto as spouse regent. I did not authorize that registration." Matteo remained in his chair. His hands shook from standing, but his voice did not. Enter Mara Ellison's proposal, my response, and the 12-second rise without amendment. Veronica closed the marital file. "A physical display does not establish capacity," she said. "It may establish coercion." Her gaze moved to Mara. This employee had private access to his clothing braces, medication schedule, and rehabilitation room. She concealed replacement locks inside her work kit, then prompted a vulnerable man to perform on command. Murmurs returned quieter now. Mara placed the locker log beside the pins. "I preserved a letter printed on council paper. I reported the altered clothing before the banquet. Don Viscari chose whether to stand. You taught him what the room needed to see." "No," Matteo said. "She showed me what you prepared the room to see." He ordered the recorder to secure the forged letter, both pairs of trousers, the chair authorization, and the locking pins under separate seals. Dario objected that security retained jurisdiction. "You are named in the evidence," Matteo replied. You retain nothing. The council's independent clerk took possession. Veronica remained composed. Then submit to an immediate capacity review. Until it concludes, your emergency proxy remains active. The recorder checked the founder's rules. The contradiction freezes succession and marital authority. It does not suspend an existing operational proxy. Veronica still controlled Schedule's legal access and the systems holding Matteo's medical records. The vote had stopped. Her power had not. Matteo looked toward Mara as the sealed evidence left the ballroom. They had won 72 hours. Veronica intended to use every minute. Chapter 11. A vote frozen, not won. The ballroom emptied under independent seal, but Veronica's authority followed Matteo home. By midnight, she had suspended Mara's staff access, blocked Dr. Warren from the estate network, and scheduled Matteo's capacity review for the following afternoon. Matteo read the notices in his study while Mara stood beside the desk. She wants the review before Jonah Price can examine the evidence, Mara said. Then you remain here until the freeze ends. It was not a request. Matteo ordered 2 guards outside Mara's room, restricted her movements to the private wing, and directed counsel to preserve the banquet proposal as a valid engagement. Mara stared at the final order. You kept it active. As my intended spouse, you cannot be dismissed, removed, or questioned without independent counsel. You decided that without asking me. I decided you would survive the next 72 hours. And what happens after his silence answered before he did? If the council accepts the engagement, Veronica's filing fails permanently. Mara set her house key on the desk. You told that room your answer belonged to you. It does. Then why does mine belong to your strategy? Matteo's expression tightened. This is protection. No. Protection offers a choice. A locked door only changes who controls it. Outside, the guards shifted at the sound of raised voices. Matteo lowered his. If you leave, Veronica can isolate you. If I stay under an engagement, I did not choose. She has already proved her argument that people near you become instruments. Mara removed her staff badge and placed it beside the key. I will testify. I will preserve the evidence. But I will not be your maid, your shield, or your legal bride. She walked toward the door. Matteo could have ordered the guards to stop her. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he pressed the release. The lock opened. Chapter 12. Protection without permission. Mara left the Viscari estate through the staff entrance, carrying 1 overnight bag and the sealed copies Lena had preserved. A black sedan waited beyond the gate. The driver lowered the window. Don Viscari ordered transport and security. Mara kept walking. At a roadside cafe, she called Jonah Price, the independent records inspector named in the founder's rules. She did not ask Matteo's counsel to arrange it. Jonah arrived with a mobile evidence case and a body camera recording. Mara gave him the locker photographs, the chain of custody log, the garment scan residue, the brace serial numbers, and the message showing the chair height adjustment. Lena joined by secure video and confirmed every timestamp. Do you have the original letter? Jonah asked. The council clerk sealed it, and the altered garments also sealed. But the standing pattern carries a workshop registration beneath the removed label. The adhesive can identify the buyer. Jonah signed each receipt. Outside, 2 Viscari guards took positions across the street. Mara called Matteo. I told them not to approach you, he said. You still sent them. Veronica controls operational security. Until the review. You are explaining why you made another decision for me. Silence passed between them. Mara looked through the window at the men watching the door. Withdraw them. Give Jonah the access he requests. Do not preserve the engagement. If I dissolve it now, you lose counsel protection. Then let me decide what I risk. Matteo's reply came slowly. Understood. Within minutes, the guards left. A notice followed from his counsel. Mara's employment had ended by her choice. The engagement held no binding authority, and all evidence requests would be answered without conditions. Jonah closed the case. He gave up his strongest shield. Mara watched the empty street. No, she said. He finally stopped using me as one. Chapter 13. The test they tried to make him fail. The capacity review began 26 hours before the freeze expired. It was held in the council clinic, not Matteo's rehabilitation suite. Jonah Price controlled the cameras while Dr. Elise Warren supervised the medical record. Veronica had already arranged the equipment. Matteo's wheelchair stood beside a low transfer platform. The seat had been reduced by 4 centimeters, the same adjustment Mara had found in the maintenance log. A second pair of braces waited on the table without visible locking pins. Veronica addressed the observers. Don Viscari claims hidden progress. We are here to determine whether that claim can be reproduced without theatrical assistance. Matteo looked at the equipment, not with devices prepared by a disputed proxy. Veronica turned to Mara, who entered wearing no uniform. Ms. Ellison is no longer an employee, Jonah said. She appears as an independent material witness. Mara placed both garment patterns beneath the document camera. She showed how the seated trousers shortened behind the knee, how the altered chair changed the angle of ascent, and how the replacement braces could appear secured while remaining mechanically unlocked. Dr. Warren inspected the joints. These housings contain no pins, she said. Dario claimed the parts had been removed for safety. Jonah opened a sealed security inventory taken that morning. Inside Dario's equipment pouch were 2 original pins, marked with Matteo's brace serial numbers. The room went silent. Mara then produced the workshop registration hidden beneath the cut label. The order had been placed through Veronica's legal office 12 days before the banquet. Veronica's expression remained calm. You have proved interference, she said, not capacity. Matteo turned toward the untouched braces Dr. Warren had brought under independent seal. Then test the man, he said, not the failure you prepared for him. Chapter 14. A marriage filed before consent. Jonah Price began with the document Veronica had called a marriage. The spouse-regent filing showed Matteo's seal at 2:16 p.m. the previous day. Dr. Warren opened her rehabilitation log. At 2:16, Matteo had been secured inside the standing frame, while his legal terminal remained locked 3 floors above. The signature device never entered this room, she said. Jonah displayed the access record. Veronica's emergency channel had generated the seal. Next came 3 rehabilitation reports, sent over 6 weeks. Each documented voluntary movement and a 12-second supported rise. All 3 reached Veronica's legal inbox. None reached the council archive. The clinic video played without sound. Matteo rose between the bars 3 weeks before the banquet. No maid stood near him. Veronica watched the screen without blinking. Jonah placed the forged letter beneath ultraviolet light. Its watermark belonged to council stationery, issued only to Veronica's office. The printer code matched the machine that produced the spouse-regent filing. Then Mara explained the clothing. The false trousers, the missing brace pins, and the lowered chair were not separate mistakes. They formed one controlled failure. Let Matteo attempt to stand record the collapse and use it to validate reports already describing him as permanently incapable. Jonah opened the final file. Helix Maritime would receive 31% of Viscari voting authority the moment Veronica became spouse regent. Dario would receive control of the eastern routes. The same approval code appeared on the garment order chair adjustment, marital filing, and helix transfer. Veronica finally spoke. I kept an unstable organization alive. Matteo looked at the evidence arranged between them. You kept me alive, he said, so you could inherit me. Chapter 15. No one inherits a living man. The independent review found Matteo cognitively capable and medically consistent with an incomplete spinal injury. He could stand briefly with locked braces, he could not walk. Neither fact determined whether he had the right to govern his own life. The council reconvened 11 minutes before the freeze expired. Veronica's proxy remained active until the evidence was accepted. Matteo possessed one faster option, an emergency veto inside the Viscari Charter. He could remove Veronica, seal the records, and punish everyone involved without exposing his medical history or the weaknesses in his office. His counsel placed the authorization before him. Matteo did not sign it. Open the record, he said. Veronica rose. You will expose every limitation they can use against you. I will expose every power you used because I refused to be examined. He released the rehabilitation reports forged, filing helix agreement and security approvals bearing Veronica's code. Then he surrendered the emergency veto that had allowed Adon to block independent review. The council voided the spouse-regent registration and ended Veronica's proxy. Helix's transfer was frozen. Dario was removed from security and referred with Veronica for prosecution over forgery, evidence manipulation, and interference with medical equipment. No one disappeared. No private sentence replaced the public record. Matteo addressed the council from his wheelchair. My failure was not sitting here, he said. It was allowing loyalty to become authority without inspection. His gaze moved to Mara seated beside Jonah as an independent witness. No one inherits a living man. No one protects a woman by choosing for her. And no office remains mine merely because I am powerful enough to keep it. The council restored his seat under permanent external review. Matteo kept his authority. He no longer kept it without limits. Chapter 16. The question without witnesses. 6 months later, the sign above Mara's workshop read, Ellison Adaptive Atelier. Inside jackets opened along hidden seams, formal trousers accommodated braces without disguising them, and every fitting began with the same question. What do you want your clothes to let you do? Mara no longer entered rooms through service doors. Her name appeared on every pattern. The Viscari investigation had continued under Jonah Price. Veronica and Dario awaited trial. Helix's transfer remained void, and Matteo's council seat now carried permanent external review. He still used his wheelchair. Rehabilitation had extended some standing sessions beyond 12 seconds, but no report called it a cure, and Matteo no longer allowed anyone to measure his authority by the distance between his body and a chair. He arrived at the atelier after closing. No guards entered with him. No lawyer carried a document. No counsel waited to record his answer. Mara looked at the empty doorway behind him. You came alone. I was told that is how invitations work. He placed a small box on her cutting table. Inside were the 2 black locking pins from the banquet mounted beneath glass. The inscription did not mention the moment he stood. It read, No answer without consent. The engagement was dissolved, Matteo said. Your employment ended. Nothing I ask here changes your work, your safety, or your name. Mara rested one hand beside the box. Then what are you asking? Matteo did not rise from his chair. Will you have dinner with me? No witnesses heard the question. No rule required her response. Mara let the silence belong to her. Then she smiled. Yes. But I choose the restaurant. Matteo moved aside so she could lock her own door. This time, neither of them followed the other. They left together. Final outro. Veronica believed power belonged to the person who prepared another human being's answer before the question was asked. She altered the chair, removed the brace locks, hid the medical record, and filed a marriage while Matteo was still alive to refuse it. The council laughed because Mara wore a maid's uniform and Matteo sat in a wheelchair. They mistook service for ambition, disability for silence, and protection for permission. Mara did not give Matteo his legs. She gave him a question no one else was allowed to answer. Matteo stood for 12 seconds, but his greater act came later when he opened the record, limited his own authority, and let Mara leave freely. Months later, he did not rise above her or ask before witnesses. He remained in his chair and offered her a choice without consequence. That answer belonged only to Mara.